What started as a routine 1:00 a.m. traffic stop didn't just end with flashing lights and handcuffs. It triggered a story that's now spiraling out of control. Because the moment King Harris was taken inside Gwinnett County Jail, everything split in two. There's the official version: speeding, a firearm obstruction. And then there's the version spreading online, quiet, unsettling, and raising one question nobody seems ready to answer. What actually happened after those doors closed? And the longer the silence gets, the louder that question becomes. What was supposed to be a routine traffic stop at 1:00 a.m. has now spiraled into something far more unsettling than anyone expected. And this time the conversation isn't just about speeding or bad decisions on the road. It's about what allegedly happened after the cuffs went on and the doors closed behind him. According to reports circulating online, what followed King Harris' arrest wasn't just standard processing, but a night that some insiders are now describing with words like excessive, aggressive, and even targeted. And as those claims spread, the silence from his family has only made the situation feel heavier, almost like something bigger is still unfolding behind the scenes. Here's what's being reported. King Harris was pulled over in Gwinnett County after authorities allegedly clocked him speeding around 15 miles over the limit. Police claim they found a firearm in the vehicle and say he refused to exit the car when instructed, leading to an obstruction charge. That's the official version. But the moment he was transported to jail is where the narrative starts to shift into something far more controversial. Online insiders and unverified sources claim that once inside custody, the treatment he received may not have been routine at all, and that he was handled in a way that some are now calling disproportionately harsh for the situation. And then there's the detail that pushed this story into viral territory almost instantly. King Harris was reportedly wearing a full Pikachu onesie at the time of arrest, a bright yellow Pokémon outfit that turned a serious situation into a surreal internet spectacle within minutes. Memes exploded, clips circulated, and social media turned the image into comedy almost immediately. But behind the humor, another layer of discussion began forming: what actually happened in the hours that followed inside the jail itself. Because while the internet focused on the bizarre visuals, other voices were asking more uncomfortable questions. Reports began suggesting that King wasn't treated like an ordinary detainee, and whispers of mistreatment started circulating across platforms. Nothing has been officially confirmed, but the language used online grew more intense as days passed, with claims pointing toward rough handling and possible misconduct during processing. And once those words entered the conversation, the tone of the entire story changed. What makes this situation even more explosive is who King Harris is. He isn't just another 21-year-old in the system. He is the son of T.I., a man who built his legacy on music rooted in street survival, legal consequences, and first-hand experience with the justice system. He is also the son of Tiny Harris, a public figure who has lived under the spotlight for decades. That combination means King has never existed outside public scrutiny. Every step, every mistake, every outburst has been documented, analyzed, and amplified online. And people haven't forgotten his history. Back in 2022, when he was still a teenager, a viral incident at a restaurant turned him into a trending topic overnight after a confrontation escalated publicly. The footage showed heated arguments, profanity, and chaotic energy that spread rapidly across social media. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some saw entitlement. Others saw a young man trying too hard to prove something. But what stood out most was that his father, T.I., didn't hold back when addressing it. He openly questioned his son's choices and warned that continuing down that path could lead to serious consequences, even prison. It wasn't said for drama. It was said from experience. Because T.I. knows exactly how quickly situations can escalate once the system becomes involved. He's lived it. He understands how a single incident can turn into a pattern, and how a pattern can become a label that follows someone for years. And unfortunately for King, the pattern didn't stop there. Over the following years, he faced multiple legal issues, traffic-related charges, missed court appearances, and additional arrests that only strengthened the public perception that he was spiraling rather than stabilizing. At one point, he even posted his own mugshot online, framing it like a statement rather than a setback, which only fueled more debate about whether he was growing up or pushing deeper into controversy. Then came another traffic stop in 2024 that escalated further after officers reportedly detected marijuana and discovered an outstanding warrant. Each incident stacked onto the last, building a narrative that the internet quickly locked in: reckless, unpredictable, and constantly on the edge of bigger consequences. But then something shifted. King became a father. That moment briefly changed the tone around him. He posted emotional messages about legacy and responsibility, even releasing music dedicated to his child. For a short period, people believed this might be the turning point, the moment that grew and dead him. Even T.I. publicly acknowledged the milestone with a mix of pride and caution, aware that real change is never guaranteed just because life changes. For a while, things seemed calmer. Old charges faded, headlines slowed, and attention moved elsewhere. Until April 13, 2026, when everything resurfaced in the most chaotic way possible. A 1:00 a.m. traffic stop, alleged speeding, a reported firearm in the vehicle, claims of obstruction after refusing to exit, and then the arrest that would once again put the Harris name at the center of controversy. But this time, it wasn't just the arrest that spread, it was everything surrounding it. The Pikachu onesie, the viral clips, the memes, and then the darker shift in conversation, as reports surfaced suggesting that what happened inside the jail may not match the public narrative. Words like crossed lines and excessive force began appearing in discussions, even without official confirmation, and that uncertainty only deepened the intrigue. And through all of this, one detail stands out more than anything else: T.I.'s silence. In previous incidents, he was quick to respond, direct, vocal, and unfiltered. He explained situations, defended his son, or confronted issues head-on. But this time, there's been no public statement, no breakdown, no explanation. And that silence has become its own kind of message. Now insiders suggest the family may be handling everything privately, possibly with legal teams preparing their next steps. Others believe the situation is too sensitive to address publicly at this stage. And underneath it all is the emotional weight that's hard to ignore, because this isn't just about headlines or arrests anymore. It's about a father watching his son walk a path that feels painfully familiar, in a system that T.I. himself has never forgotten. And as more details continue to circulate without confirmation, one thing is clear: this story isn't settling down anytime soon. In fact, it feels like we're only seeing the surface of something much deeper, and what actually happened behind those jail doors may be the part that changes everything. What was supposed to be a routine 1:00 a.m. traffic stop has now turned into something far more volatile than anyone anticipated. And at this point, the story is no longer just about speeding, a traffic violation, or even a late-night arrest. It has evolved into a swirling mix of allegations, rumors, and unanswered questions about what allegedly happened after the cuffs went on and the doors of Gwinnett County Jail closed behind King Harris. Because according to reports circulating online, what followed that arrest wasn't just standard processing. It was, as some unnamed sources are now describing it, something far more intense. Words like excessive, aggressive, and unnecessarily rough have started appearing across social media threads, painting a picture that hasn't been confirmed, but also hasn't been fully dismissed either. And in the absence of official clarity, speculation has filled every gap. But before we get into what allegedly happened inside the jail, you have to understand how quickly this situation escalated from the start. King Harris was reportedly pulled over in Gwinnett County after police say he was clocked speeding roughly 15 miles over the limit. According to the official narrative, officers then discovered a firearm in the vehicle and claimed that King refused repeated commands to exit the car. That refusal, police say, led to an obstruction charge and a physical removal from the vehicle. That is the documented version of events. But what happened after that moment, the transition from roadside stop to booking, has become the center of growing controversy. Because once King Harris arrived at Gwinnett County Jail shortly after 1:30 a.m., the situation shifted into something far more complicated. Standard procedure began: intake processing, fingerprinting, cataloging personal belongings, and a mugshot. On paper, nothing unusual, just another overnight detainee entering the system. Except that's where the story starts to fracture. Online accounts, unverified but rapidly spreading, claim that once staff realized who was being processed, the atmosphere inside the facility changed. Not officially, not on record, but in tone, in behavior, in attitude. Some anonymous posts suggest King was treated differently than a typical detainee, with claims ranging from intimidating handling to unnecessarily rough intake procedures. No official agency has confirmed any misconduct, but the speed at which these claims spread is what turned a routine arrest into a viral debate almost overnight. And then came the detail that pushed everything into internet chaos. King Harris was reportedly wearing a full Pikachu onesie during the arrest. Bright yellow, full body, completely surreal against the backdrop of flashing red and blue lights. Within minutes of footage and images circulating online, the internet did what it always does, turned it into a meme storm. Edits, jokes, comparisons, Pokémon references flooding every platform. For many, it looked like comedy. For others, it was a distraction from a much more serious underlying question: what actually happened after he was taken inside? Because while social media was laughing at the visuals, a different conversation was forming underneath it all. Reports began circulating that King may have been treated in a more forceful manner during intake. Some posts even went further, suggesting that deputies became more aggressive after what they described as resistance or attitude during processing. Again, nothing has been verified, but in the absence of clarity, narratives tend to grow faster than facts. And then came another layer. Within hours of his release on bond, King reportedly took to Instagram. At first, his tone was light, even sarcastic. He joked about the arrest, referencing the Pikachu outfit, comparing officers to characters from video games, trying to frame the experience as something absurd rather than serious. But that tone didn't last long. Because in a follow-up post, the energy shifted sharply. The humor disappeared. In its place was frustration, anger, a direct message aimed at law enforcement, accompanied by profanity and a brief but loaded statement that he had been in jail all night. Now, on the surface, that phrase is technically accurate. Overnight detention is standard in many felony-related arrests while bond is processed. But online, tone matters more than technicality. And to many viewers, it didn't read like a neutral statement. It read like frustration spilling over from something deeper. And that's where the first major rumor took hold. Whispers began circulating that King Harris may have been placed in isolation at some point during the night. No official jail logs confirm this. No verified documentation supports it. But the rumor spread anyway, fueled by questions. Why isolate him? Was it for safety? Was it disciplinary, or was it procedural? The truth is, in high-profile detentions, separation can happen for multiple reasons: protection from other detainees, facility logistics, or behavioral concerns. But online, nuance rarely survives long. Another claim followed closely behind that one. Some users alleged that King was the only person in the vehicle arrested that night, while others inside the car were not taken into custody. That detail, whether accurate or misinterpreted, became a flashpoint. Because perception matters, And to the public, the image was simple: one young man in a Pikachu suit taken in alone. Legally, there are straightforward explanations. Charges often depend on possession, control, or responsibility for specific items. In this case, a firearm and alleged THC vape pen. But online discourse doesn't operate in legal frameworks. It operates in emotional ones. And that's where the story started to split into two competing narratives. One side said this was simple accountability, poor decisions, legal consequences, standard procedure. The other side said something else entirely, that this was a case where treatment may have escalated beyond necessity. Then came another unverified claim, that King requested to contact family during processing and was temporarily denied due to alleged noncompliance or attitude issues. Again, nothing confirmed, but enough to intensify public curiosity. Because once you introduce the idea of communication being restricted, whether true or not, it shifts the emotional weight of the entire story. And underneath all of this is a figure who cannot be separated from the narrative: T.I. A man who built his career not just on music, but on lived experience. A man who has spoken openly about incarceration, consequences, and the realities of the justice system. A man who, in past interviews, warned his own son about the path he was on. "I know that energy," he once said. "I was that energy." At the time, it sounded like guidance. Now, those words are resurfacing everywhere, reframed as something almost prophetic. Because if the rumors are true, even partially true, then this situation hits differently for him on a personal level. Not as a celebrity, not as a public figure, but as a father who understands exactly what jail environments feel like, down to the smallest detail. The tension, the silence, the uncertainty, the loss of control. And according to unnamed insiders, T.I. was not calm when he heard what allegedly happened. Not publicly, not immediately. Behind closed doors, the reaction is being described as intense, emotional, and deeply personal. But publicly, there has been silence. And that silence has only amplified speculation. Meanwhile, King's release on bond came relatively quickly compared to what some people expected for a felony-related case. That detail sparked its own debate. Some called it privilege. Others pointed out that legal representation and procedural timing often exploit an expedited release. But once again, perception overrides explanation. Online, the internet split almost instantly into two camps. One camp argued, he keeps putting himself in these situations. Actions have consequences. The system is doing what it is designed to do. The other camp responded, even if he made mistakes, treatment inside custody must still follow lawful standards. Consequences do not justify misconduct. And somewhere between those two positions sits the uncomfortable reality. Both accountability and rights can exist in the same space. Law enforcement has publicly maintained that the stop, arrest, and detention followed standard procedure. No misconduct investigation has been announced. No internal review has been confirmed. But online narratives don't wait for official timelines. They escalate. And then came the twist that reignited everything again. A small local post began circulating, claiming that security footage from inside the jail intake area allegedly exists and may show a more heated exchange during booking. No video was provided, no evidence shared, just a claim. But in the internet ecosystem, even the suggestion of footage changes everything. Because once people believe there might be video, the demand becomes immediate. Release it. Show what happened. Prove it. And that demand pulls everyone deeper into speculation. Civil rights discussions begin resurfacing. Old interviews of T.I. speaking about systemic pressure reappear. Conversations about celebrity treatment within the justice system gain traction again. And suddenly, this is no longer just a story about King Harris. It becomes something broader, about visibility, accountability, and how public figures move through systems that are not built around fame. And at the center of it all is one unresolved question that keeps growing louder. What actually happened inside those hours between booking and bond? Because depending on that answer, the entire narrative changes. If the official version stands, then this is a straightforward case of a traffic stop, possession allegations, obstruction, and overnight detention. But if even parts of the online claims hold weight, if treatment crossed lines, if procedures escalated beyond standard practice, then this story moves from local arrest news into something much larger. And that's why it hasn't cooled down. Because right now, there is a gap between documentation and perception. And in that gap, the internet is building its own version of events. One side wants accountability for choices made. The other wants accountability for treatment received. And neither side is waiting for the final report. Because in stories like this, truth doesn't just emerge quietly. It collides. But in the age of social media, whispers don't just travel fast. They travel faster than the truth. And by the time facts catch up, the narrative is already halfway written by strangers online. And that's exactly what happened here. Because while official statements remained limited, the silence from T.I. was becoming impossible to ignore. This is not someone who typically stays quiet. Throughout his career, he has addressed controversies head-on: viral clips, accusations, rumors, misunderstandings. He talks, he explains, he defends. That has always been his pattern. But this time, nothing. No live stream, no statement, no clarification, not even a carefully worded post. Just silence. And in the entertainment world, silence is never neutral. It gets interpreted, analyzed, and often filled with speculation. According to unnamed entertainment insiders, that silence may not be accidental. Reports suggest that legal advisors could already be reviewing the full timeline of King Harris' arrest and overnight detention. One unverified blog even claimed attorneys requested access to internal documentation from Gwinnett County Jail. Nothing confirmed, no official filings announced publicly. But the implication alone changes the temperature of the entire situation. Because once lawyers step beyond handling charges and start examining detention procedures, it signals concern about what happened inside those hours most people never see. Then came the moment that pushed everything into a new emotional register. Late that night, King Harris reposted a cryptic message on his Instagram story. "Sometimes you laugh so people don't see what really happened." No explanation, no context, no clarification. Just that line. And within minutes, screenshots spread across every platform imaginable. Suddenly, earlier jokes about Team Rocket and the Pikachu costume were being reinterpreted through a completely different lens. What once looked like humor now felt like deflection, a coping mechanism, a shield. People started asking questions no one could answer definitively. Was he minimizing something serious? Was the humor masking frustration? Or was the internet reading too much into a vague post? And then, just as speculation reached a new peak, another layer emerged. A local journalist reported that King Harris' bond may have been processed faster than expected for a felony possession-related case, allegedly due to immediate legal intervention. That detail alone ignited a new argument online. Some called it privilege. Others pushed back, arguing it was simply effective legal response and procedural timing. But either way, the perception had shifted again. Behind the scenes, tensions reportedly escalated further. Sources close to the situation claim T.I. was not just concerned about the arrest itself, but deeply upset about how the entire incident unfolded from the roadside stop to the jail intake process. Not publicly, not yet, but privately, reportedly with intense emotion. And this is where the situation becomes more complicated than a typical celebrity arrest story. Because T.I. isn't just a father reacting emotionally in isolation. He's someone who understands the system from both sides. He has lived the experience of arrest, detention, and incarceration. He knows what those environments feel like, not from theory but from memory. And now, he is watching his son walk through a version of that same system decades later. With the same surname, the same visibility, and arguably even more scrutiny. That emotional overlap is what makes this different. Because if King Harris felt mistreated, even in perception or misunderstanding, then the conversation stops being just about behavior. It becomes about experience inside the system itself. Just that sentence. And within minutes, it spread everywhere. Screenshots, reposts, threads, commentary videos. Suddenly, earlier jokes about Pikachu, Team Rocket, and chaotic humor were being reinterpreted through a completely different lens. What once looked like comedy now felt like concealment. What seemed like light-hearted trolling now looked like possible deflection. And the internet did what it always does. It started reading between lines that may or may not exist. Was he hinting at something deeper? Was humor a coping mechanism? Or was the audience projecting meaning onto ambiguity? No one had answers. But speculation doesn't wait for answers. Then another development surfaced. A local report suggested that King Harris' bond may have been processed faster than expected for a felony possession-related case, allegedly due to immediate legal intervention. That single detail became another lightning rod. Critics called it privilege. Supporters called it effective legal response. But underneath both arguments was the same reality. Perception had already overtaken procedure. And behind the scenes, tension reportedly escalated further. Sources claim T.I. was not just concerned, but deeply upset about how the situation unfolded from the roadside stop to the jail intake process. Not publicly, not visibly, but privately in what insiders describe as a highly emotional response. And this is where the story becomes more complex than a simple arrest narrative. Because T.I. isn't just reacting as a celebrity father. He is reacting as someone who has lived through incarceration himself. Someone who understands exactly what detention environments feel like. The uncertainty, the control, the tension, the lack of power in those moments. And now he is watching his son go through a version of that same system, decades later, under far more public scrutiny. That emotional overlap is what makes this situation different. Because if King Harris felt mistreated, even if only in perception, that shifts the conversation from behavior alone to experience inside the system. And that is where public debate explodes. A petition demanding release of jail intake footage began circulating and quickly gained traction. Thousands of signatures appeared within hours. The demand was simple. Release the footage, show what happened, prove transparency. But authorities have remained silent. And in a digital environment, silence rarely diffuses pressure. It amplifies it. At the same time, critics doubled down on a different interpretation. They pointed to the alleged facts. He refused commands. He was allegedly in possession of controlled substances. A firearm was reportedly found in the vehicle. Obstruction followed. To them, the case is straightforward, consequences following actions. But others pushed back just as firmly. Even if those facts are true, they argue, treatment inside custody still has legal and ethical boundaries. Accountability does not erase rights. Frustration does not justify escalation. Detention does not eliminate standards. And that tension, between accountability and treatment, has now become the center of the entire conversation. Not just online, but culturally. Then came another development that pushed the situation into its most volatile phase yet. A rumor began circulating that internal surveillance footage from the jail intake area may exist and could show a heated exchange during processing. No video has been released, no evidence verified, no official acknowledgement given. But in the age of social media, the possibility of footage is enough to change everything. Because if footage exists and shows nothing unusual, the narrative collapses. But if it shows something unexpected, the story transforms instantly. That uncertainty is what keeps the entire situation alive. Meanwhile, commentators, radio hosts, and industry voices have begun weighing in carefully, some directly, others indirectly. The language is cautious, but the implications are clear. Everyone is watching this closely, waiting to see whether this remains a standard arrest case or escalates into something much larger. And through it all, one detail becomes increasingly unavoidable. T.I.'s silence. Because silence from someone known for speaking out doesn't feel neutral, it feels intentional, strategic, loaded. Some believe he is waiting for legal clarity before making any public move. Others believe he is preparing a response that will not be emotional, but precise. And that distinction matters. Because when he does speak, it will not just be commentary, it will shape perception. And if he suggests that anything improper occurred during detention, it will immediately elevate this from a celebrity arrest story into a broader institutional conversation. Now the internet is divided into two clear camps. One side says this is a young man repeating patterns, facing consequences, and finally reaching a breaking point that was predictable from earlier behavior. The other side says something more serious may have happened during detention, and that deserves investigation regardless of prior mistakes. Both sides are loud. Both sides are certain. But neither side has full information. And that is where the tension builds. Because this is no longer just about King Harris. It has become about accountability on both ends, behavior outside custody and conduct inside it. And then came the most quietly explosive detail of all. King reportedly deleted several of his initial Instagram stories. The jokes, the captions, the chaotic humor. Gone. No explanation. And that decision raised even more questions. Was it legal advice? Was it personal reflection? Was it preparation for something unfolding behind the scenes? Because in modern high-profile cases, social media is not just expression. It is evidence, context, and narrative control. And now both sides, the father and the son, have fallen silent at the same time. That silence feels less like absence and more like preparation. Meanwhile, legal analysts have emphasized that felony possession charges in Georgia are serious. Prior history can influence sentencing. Outcomes are not guaranteed, and courts will treat repeated incidents differently than isolated mistakes. So King Harris now stands at a crossroads. One path leads toward resolving the case quietly, accepting legal consequences, and moving forward privately. The other path leads toward challenging circumstances publicly, if any misconduct is believed to have occurred. Either direction carries weight. Either direction will define how he is viewed going forward. And in the background, an old statement from T.I. has resurfaced everywhere. If he keep this up, he going to prison. At the time, it sounded like a warning. Now people are replaying it like foreshadowing. But the truth is more complicated than internet narratives allow. Because this moment could still go in multiple directions. It could become a cautionary chapter in a repeating cycle. Or it could become a turning point that forces reflection, accountability, and change. Right now, nothing is finalized. Charges are still pending. No footage has been released. No official misconduct investigation has been confirmed. And no public statement has been made by the family, which means everything remains unresolved. And in unresolved moments like this, speculation fills every gap. So the real question isn't just what happened that night. It's what happens next. Because depending on who speaks first, what evidence surfaces, and what decisions are made behind closed doors, this story could either settle quietly or escalate into something far bigger than anyone expected. And for now, all anyone can do is wait.